got to have that, that relationship that that they're going to say, hey, this is not really a wise thing for you, to be able to have that sounding board for making those decisions.
From humble beginnings, Insurance Claim HQ has grown to one of the largest property casualty firms in the country. We didn't do it alone, and you shouldn't either. Every week, we're talking to claims professionals and top experts from all over, all to help you grow your business and make you stronger. Let's level up together. I'm Galen Hare. Welcome to the Level Up Claims Podcast.
Hey everyone, I'm Parker Logan, attorney here at Insurance Claim HQ. Galen couldn't make it, but I'm excited to host today's episode featuring Rob Broadhead. Most companies don't realize their technology is holding them back. Not because it's broken, but because it was never designed to grow with the business. Over time, small inefficiencies stack up, systems stop talking to each other, and leaders end up working around their tools instead of through them. Today's guest, Rob Broadhead, has spent more than 30 years helping organizations design technology for growth. As the founder of RB Consulting and developerpreneur, Rob specializes in helping small and mid-sized teams compete with much larger players by building smarter systems, not bigger headaches. Let's jump in.
I'm Galen Hare. If you're serious about winning in this industry, June 12th of 2026 matters. The Level Up Claim Summit brings together serious operators who want to sharpen their edge and separate from the pack. No fluff, no vendor circus, just real conversations with people who are actually moving this industry forward. Seats are intentionally limited. We keep the room exclusive. Once the room is full, registration closes. If you're ready to compete at a higher level, don't wait. Go to levelupclaim.com and request your seat now. I'll see you on June 12th.
So Mr. Rob Broadhead, software developer, technology strategist extraordinaire, and founder of RB Consulting. How are you today?
I am doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, man. So I just wanted to start out talking about your background. You've been in this business for 30 years now, I understand. And just tell us how you decided to start your consulting business, and how you've seen the industry evolve and how you've seen, let's call them tech projects, succeed or fail 30 years ago versus today.
Wow, that's a lot. Let's see. I got started into it because I started into Big Six consulting and sort of worked my way into smaller and smaller boutique consulting before it was even called boutique consulting firms, and ended up in a lot of startups, things like that. And so I got to see a lot of the entire process from start to finish, all the different areas within a company, whether it's accounting, finance, management, technology, all of the things, marketing, sales, all that. And basically got into it because I realized that my approach was not necessarily it was one of those, I guess, I complained about a lot of projects going south, and I said, okay, well, I've seen enough to see why they go south and want to help people avoid that so that you don't have, like, as you mentioned, like pet projects that suddenly become projects that anchor down your entire company or turn flagships that end up, burning at sea or something like that. So early on, I decided to do it as part of helping customers get their projects done properly, better, quicker, faster, and improve on the success rate. And definitely over the years, it has changed quite a bit. It's actually really interesting because early on, pet projects were really small in scope. Even though it took a long time, it'd be things like, hey, I want to essentially be like, build a spreadsheet, or as the web came in, I just need to build a website. Then it was like, I need to build a website that I've got 3 products on it and I just want to be able to sell them. And it sort of grew and grew. And then it became, now you've got to integrate with some fulfillment group. You have to deal with payment processing, and now they want entire catalogs and searchable. And from 3 products, now it's 3 million products, and all the different SKUs and all the different ways they do it, and affiliate marketing and vendors. It just gets more and more complex. But interestingly enough, in the last few years, really even in the last year, as AI has jumped in, there have been a lot of these like pet projects that have been sort of like reversal, but they're not as full, they're not as complete, but it's basically scratching an itch where somebody's like, you know what, I've got this problem I need to solve. I think I can get something done pretty quick. I've seen people do it, theoretically. I've seen it bit done, so maybe I can get it done, or I can get somebody that with AI can get it done very quick and very cheaply.
Gotcha. And we're, of course, particularly focused on um, claims, insurance claims. How have you seen, in your experience, claim-based businesses when it comes to this stuff? Are they particularly vulnerable in this area, or have they got it figured out?
Um, they are definitely unique, depending on the kinds of claims you're dealing with, they are definitely a unique, um, area because there is a combination of things that make it a little more challenging. The first claims company that I worked with was actually trying to solve that right away. Is that they realized that one, you got to take pictures, and this was for home claims. So you got to go out there, you've got to take pictures, you've got to do all your measurements and turn all that stuff in. The trick was that usually you were at the time. Um, you didn't have connectivity like you do today. And so one of their biggest issues was being able to actually have an app or something that you could use while you were out in the field. Now that has changed a little bit because now we have, people have more connectivity, but it actually has forced things more often that I've seen it goes from web applications that somebody would like, carry a laptop and then eventually like a tablet of some sort and log into it. And now it's something where, well, we need to have a desktop thing for the people in the office so they can see the full picture, so they can see everything that they're writing up as far as a claim is concerned. But then out in the field, they need to be able to just on their phone be able to like, get the key information, upload pictures, make sure that it gets synchronized up. And then, especially if there's like something that's got to go today versus the other data that maybe they can, enter later at home. And then it's sort of got to really got to transfer from one to the other. So I want to be able to start on my phone, get the basic information in, but then when I'm dealing with something, I've got to do bigger typing and more information like that. I don't want to be stuck on my phone. I want to be able to, use my laptop or a desktop or full size keyboard. So it's definitely an area that is I hate to say because you've overused it, it's niche in a way, but it's also things that it's problems that I see solved or run into in other areas. The disconnected thing occurs when you're in like financial institutions who've got a lot of concrete and a lot of steel and things like that, make it very hard for wireless to work. Hospitals are like that as well because you got all the hospital devices. Similar situation, you have things like doctors want to take a picture of like a wound or an X-ray or something like that they're dealing with. They've got to attach it to their entire case, just like claims. And if it's a healthcare claim, then as you know, you've got the same huge amounts of documentation and screenshots and attachments and things like that that go with a claim.
Right. I was on a joint inspection a couple of weeks ago, and the adjuster there had an iPad, and before we started, he was raving about how good his software was and how much he loved it. And apparently that morning, it was either his iOS or the software had updated, and it wasn't working. So he was basically dead in the water at the joint inspection, trying to figure it out. It was pretty amazing to see a guy who had been doing it for 30 plus years, adjusting like you've done the technology stuff for 30 plus years, basically revert back to kind of not knowing what to do if his iPad wasn't working. So
That's a key part is you have to be able to handle if it doesn't work. We ran into that with the situation where they were assessing, they're out and assessing sites, contractors, and there was a situation where there was an update, things weren't working, and that was one of the things we had to walk them through. Like, okay, here's a fallback. You can get the information you need, and we can still get it into the system and make it flow because you can't. You can always fall back to like pencil and paper and things like that. But if that doesn't get into the system, sometimes then that blocks you from moving forward. So you've got to be able to return to the old days if everything goes bad.
right. And speaking of the old days, so this industry you're in has obviously evolved greatly over 30 years. Is there anything you would say that maybe hasn't changed from when you started in the vein of like successful tech decision making, uh, as tools have evolved, hey, these principles are still the same as they were 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I've actually sort of gone back to my roots, I guess, in recent years and really been beating the drum on this, is that it really does come down to technology is just solving problems. And the key to success, whether it was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, last week, is really understanding what the problem is that you're solving and making sure that the solution is solving that problem and not a solution looking in search of a problem, which sometimes, happens where people say, oh, there's this great technology, like, hey, we've got these iPads, so we should be able to do something with them. Well, you've got to make sure that you're, that's all well and good, but you got to make sure that you're actually doing something that is useful. You're not just saying, okay, now we're going to make everybody jump on iPads. You need to realize that there needs to be a value in them, doing that. And this is an industry amongst several where it's very important. You don't need to just go off and do something because it's cool or it's the latest tech. You need to still be able to follow all the processes, do all the procedures that are, what make your business successful in the first place.
Right. And I think we'd both agree that the tech these days is there, right? The tech is good. But tell me about, what systems people need to have in place to be able to maximize the use of this good tech we have now.
You need to have good procedures. You have good processes in the first place because technology is going to help you do something faster. Everybody, now it's like, oh, I can just have AI do this thing, automate this process. Well, if the process isn't well defined, or if it's broken, then automating it really doesn't do much for you. It's just going to highlight the break, or it's going to allow you to break faster, or see errors more quickly. And I think that's one of the things that we run into along the lines with that is also um, I think we overestimate scaling sometimes as we will scale something really quick and maybe that process scales real fast, but we end up it really doesn't help us overall because there's a bottleneck further down the line. This is something actually in claims. I've seen this several times where there is an opportunity, and I've talked to customers about this where there's a little give and take where it's like, yeah, we could get our claims entered faster, but we still have somewhere down the line that they have to be, reviewed and accepted and all of those kinds of things. And that becomes a bottleneck. So you can spend a lot of time getting a certain part of the certain step of the process really humming fast. But if you don't have the whole thing, then it ends up not really, you don't get the bang for your buck that you would otherwise. So you have to make sure that you're thinking about, okay, if we can now submit, a million claims into our company in a day, does that even help us? Or does that just cause a big backlog because now all these claims have gone through, but we still have like a very, a realistic process of being able to push those through. And then of course we've got the vendors on the back end, whoever it is that's actually, paying those out and some of those kinds of things is depending on what levers you control and what cogs you can move. There's limitations to what you can, what it's worth automating essentially, or what it's worth speeding up.
Right. And you mentioned vendors. Um, I feel like some organizations or businesses, we're going back to just buying the tech, right? What do you see most businesses misunderstand about, let's say, buying tech versus building solutions and kind of letting, their vendors dictate, that some of their processes versus, telling the vendors what they need or want?
That is very much the solution looking for a problem to me is that's one of the things that's one of the things that we promote ourselves is that we are technology agnostic. We're going to push for understanding how you do, how you solve your problems, how you work as a business, and then find a solution that works for you. Way too often, I do find situations where you've got companies that they got a vendor in, they say, well, we do it because we were told that we had to do it that way. And there is butting heads at times where, a vendor will come in and say, well, you've got to do it like this. And the business will kick back and say, no, we can't, or we would love to, but we have a regulation, or, we've got a vendor that we're relying on down the road and we can't integrate with them if we don't, follow this step or we have this piece of data. So very much there's a lot in build versus buy and making that decision. I think buy is much more viable these days. There's a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of solutions out there. Your problem is not as unique as you think it is. And there are a lot of things that the cost has come down because that's what happens. If you can sell the same thing to 50 people, it's cheaper than having to build it for just, one company. So costs have come down, but then within that, if you buy something that's not custom, then you're locking yourself into it. And I think it's, one of the things that is a common misstep is not doing the due diligence. And instead of dictating and requesting and questioning the vendor up front, it's more allowing the vendor to pitch to you. And they'll say, oh, we can do all this stuff and this is great. And this is how we're going to solve all your problems without you saying, but wait a minute, here's our unique problems, or here's our unique processes that everybody has at every business. I don't care how standardized the industry is. Every business is going to have their secret sauce. They're going to have something that distinguishes them, and if that isn't supported by the vendor, then it's maybe not a good fit at all. And if not, it's going to be sometimes the worst and most expensive choices are trying to jam that square peg into a round hole.
Hmm. And I would think a lot of these vendors in this space, I'm sure there's great ones, but I'm sure a lot of them overpromise and underproduce, right?
Oh yeah, I think it is. That's sales and marketing 101. And I don't want to disparage sales and marketing people. That's sort of what it is you say, yeah, we can do that. But it comes down to the details, is that disconnects on both sides. If the vendor says, yeah, we've done this for 50 other companies and you've got some unique constraints, they may think that you're just like everybody else, but they didn't do their due diligence to realize that, hey, you've got something that's a little bit different. And so, yeah, this is something maybe we can't do, or it's going to cost us a lot more time and effort than we thought.
And I guess to put it bluntly, if you find yourself in that situation, is your suggestion have your vendor find a solution or find a new vendor?
Yeah. I mean, but that's, oh God, I wish it was that easy. Usually
Right.
I don't know how many times that's sort of how I got into this, is that
Right.
I would be the other vendor, and I would always come in with this like, well, the last company did this and this, and they got us in a hole. And now we've burned through a lot of our budget, and we're really, sort of left holding the bag. What can you do to help us? And it's those things. It's like, man, I wish I'd been able to talk to you, 6 months or a year earlier, because then we could have gotten you on a track and avoided all of these mistakes that ended up being so costly.
Gotcha. Let's talk about how smaller companies can innovate these days. I've heard from so many people, whether it's in this industry or any others, hey, there's no way, I have a technology or software driven or based business. There's no way I can compete with big tech. What are your thoughts on where smaller businesses or smaller teams fall, kind of in the hierarchy structure? And do they have a chance against big tech these days?
I would say they definitely do. I've seen in my career that there are periodic, hate again, it's cliche, but like game changing moments or watershed moments where technology makes a move that essentially levels the playing field again. It happened back with when internet became a big thing, and you saw these websites, and very small companies were actually in better position than bigger companies to move quickly and adopt some new technologies and actually, like, craft their unique path and become a business. And then further along, like Amazon is what they are because, you know, 30, I guess almost 30 years ago now, they said, hey, we're going to sell books online. And everybody's like, oh, great, that sounds fun. But now they sell everything almost except books, although there's, I guess they still do that. But, it's just, that allows you to be very small and grow. And this is a perfect time, if there ever was one, with AI, particularly with voice recognition and video recognition and AI in the last 3 to 5 years really moving quickly. There are lots and lots of opportunities, and the big companies are not going to be able. They're just too big to see it to move. They're learning. But usually what they do is they let the small guys go out there and figure it out, and then they go buy the winners and something like that. Which, if you're the winner, you may not mind that. You're like, okay, I'm okay being a small company. If Google drops big bags of money on top of me and says, "Hey, we love what you did," you may be okay with that.
Right. And do you see opportunities for small companies? Maybe they're growing faster than they can handle. We see that a lot in this
Mhm.
business, especially here after a hurricane, right?
Mhm.
People's businesses take off, and their head count, gets very high, but they don't have the systems in place, particularly the technology to keep up with it. Is the
Mhm.
technology now good enough, or will it be, where um, technology can kind of, or systems, I would say, can replace the need for headcount growth?
Oh, definitely. I think that is one of the things I talk to people a lot about is going from what I refer to as survival mode to scaling mode or growth mode. Almost every successful company will go through this. There's that point where you're just like you're cranking, you're starting out, you're just doing everything you can to just like, get money in because the money's going out as fast as it's coming in.
Yeah.
And
Scaling
I've
at
recently
chaos, right?
yeah, it's to me, it's like, when you're in a kitchen and you're just like doing a big meal for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, and you get done and it's a great meal, but the place is a mess. And that's sort of what happens. You get out of growth mode and you've just been doing what you can to make things happen. And it includes like, cutting some corners and taking some shortcuts and not walking through, documenting processes and building those processes and building those systems. But there comes a point where it's like now you need those systems or you're not going to be able to grow. You're going to run into issues. And that's exactly what you need to do is instead of, a lot of times it's interesting. It's paradoxical because it's basically instead of just diving in and let's go forward because we've got this big growth, step back a minute and take a look at what that's going to look like. What are you going to need to be? Put a roadmap together, instead of just diving in, have a plan. And it is technology will allow you to get there, but you've got to know, you don't have to, but it helps a lot if you know the technology you need before you need it. So, for example, if suddenly there's a bunch of storms, you got a lot of people going out and now you've got to hire, you've got to do all these things you need to do today, or yesterday in some cases, then you want to have those. That's why you want to be able to, where you do have breathing room, spend some time planning for that. And then, of course, with those growth things, is you got to figure out what happens when going through. If you're cyclical, going through that cycle is okay. Now I've hired a lot of people. I've done all this work. What am I going to do when everything starts to dry up? Whether it's and it may be simple. The obvious things of like some people are going to have to be let go, but maybe you want to make sure you're letting go the people you want to let go. If you've got some people you found that are great, you want to make sure you've got systems in place or procedures in place to know to vet to get reviews so you can say, hey, this is our core, this is what we want to do. And the more that you can get some time to step back and look ahead to that, the more that you can actually build a business that can scale and grow and handle those ups and downs of the markets, whatever market you're in.
And kind of sticking with that theme, anybody who's listening to this is, they're running a company, or they're in the leadership hierarchy structure. What are some of the signs maybe they can look for, as indicators of, hey, we need a technology tune up. We need to look at all this stuff, and figure out, how we can improve it.
There's a couple things. My favorite is if you're like, one is if you're really just you're sitting there and you're going, well, I don't really. If somebody's asked you like, what are your systems? What are the systems that you have? What do you do? If your answer is not really sure, that's a pretty good indicator right there. One of the things I find a lot is when people say we ask like, okay, why are we? You ask why, and you say, well, why are we doing it that way? And the answer is, well, that's the way we've always done it. That's the way it's been. That's how that's what this vendor did, where you can't really the answer is not really an answer. It's more of a deflection of saying that, well, it's more of an explanation than an answer. Those are things where it's like, okay, well, we need to maybe step back a little bit and take a look at that. If you look at one of the easy ways for anybody running a company is look at your numbers from like last month, last quarter, last year, and go through where your expenses were. And if you've got IT expenses that you're like, why are we, that's really big, why are we doing it? Are we getting our value out of it? Or I don't even know what that is. Those are all key things where it's like maybe you've got some licenses you haven't paid attention to. Maybe you've got some stuff that you purchased, but nobody got trained on it, so nobody's using it right. And then the other thing is just talking to as an owner, as a leader, talking to your team, talking to your people, And what, just have a conversation with them like, this is what I think we do. This is how I think we do it. These are the systems I think we have, and make sure that they agree with you, because you have things like, shadow spreadsheets, as they call them, stuff like that, where you've got, entire systems within your company that aren't actually documented, aren't actually official, because they're actually workarounds for the systems that you think you have, that just, they're either broken or they don't work. And when the people don't trust you, they're going to find another way to get their job done.
Right. And I've heard from so many people, business owners in particular, say, hey, I'd like to do that in the technology IT software space or try to streamline my stuff, but it's just so expensive. How can business owners or people leverage or figure out, how can I turn these tools that all cost money, right?
Mhm.
How can I turn them from something I can think about as a cost to something that's going to actually improve my business and drive growth?
It really is. It becomes just it's almost simple math at that point. As you look at you need to look at what your problems are. What are your, top three problems? What are your top three places that you're spending money right now, as far as a business, outside of IT? And then what can we do to maybe improve that? And IT should be brought in to help improve that. Now, sometimes there's just overhead and stuff like that. There's administrative tasks, but even those, IT should be helping with you. It shouldn't just be, you shouldn't be looking at it as like, okay, well, we've got like, let's go back a little, a few years, a little throwback of like, okay, we've got to spend for laptops and cell phones and networking so that everybody has a computer. It's like, well, no, that should be part of, maybe it's part of doing business, but it's probably part of helping you do business better. It's part of being able to talk to a vendor. It's being able to support your customer. It's being able to track a sale all the way through the process. And as a, if you're getting into those situations, the first thing again goes, step back, assess what it is you really want. What is your goal? If you're thinking that I think technology should be able to help me, well, you need to have something a little more specific than I think it can help me. And you can start the conversation. Just don't jump into a project. You can talk to a vendor and say, hey, I'm just, here's where I'm at. Lay it on the table. Like, these are some things that I think we can improve. Tell me how technology can help us. And if they can give you a firm like, this is what it's going to take, this is what we're going to be able to prove, this is what the cost is going to be to expect, the cost up front, here's what your long-term return on investment is, it should be, pretty straightforward at that point. If you're dealing in a lot of vagaries, then you're almost never going to win. So if they're saying, well, we'll get going and just like, we're just going to start charging you, and somewhere down the line we'll get you a product or we'll solve all your problems, that's, those kinds of things are always going to be snake oil. They're always going to be, those are where even the vendors that are honest ones, if you bring them in and basically like, I'm just going to write checks and I need you guys to fix stuff, then it becomes a problem. And I have literally had customers with that over the years, where we're cranking through stuff and we get to a point where I say, just wait, we could keep going and we can keep doing stuff. We can stay busy. We can earn your money every month, but this is not a good fit for you, at least right now, as I'm concerned that we're getting ahead of where you are. We're not actually providing real value. And I think that's why you want to get long-term partners that are not just putting bodies into the company, the people that they know your business, they're invested in you, and you got to have that, that relationship that, that they're going to say, hey, this is not really a wise thing for you, to be able to have that sounding board for making those decisions.
That's interesting. You used the term snake oil, and I kind of want to pivot to the space that I exclusively practice in, is the property claim space. And the big thing, not only in that space but everywhere else in the world right now, is AI. So what have you seen in terms of the property claim space and AI? What can AI actually do and help you with, versus what's hype, or what's risky to try to rely on AI for in the property claim space?
Well, that's first off, any claim space, and particularly this one, is I think the AI can help you write your claim up properly, because it can basically it's and you have this is also where the caveat is, this is where your concerns is, you got to make sure that you're having AI check itself so that it's using current information, that it's using correct information. But you can use it as a second set of eyes. So when you go to submit something, you can say, hey, let's run it through AI and have it, grade it or evaluate it and say, does this make sense? Is this likely to pass? And if there's hard numbers or values that you have to have, if there's hard values or ranges that don't make sense, that you calculated something that you missed the calculation, and they're gonna say, well, that's gonna kick back the claim. It's great for that like error checking approach. It can help you a little bit with, if there's stuff that you need to wordsmith, and especially if you've got something you write something up and you're just doing it while you're there, you're on site, you're writing it up, and you want to, clean it up, then AI can help you with that and just say, making sure that you get all of the key points. The challenge again there, or the risk is if you don't review it, you want to make sure it doesn't, sneak something in that doesn't make any sense, which is known for that, or it has, as they call it, hallucinations, where AI will just make up, stuff. So you have to watch out that anything where you're asking for contact information, you're asking for an address, you're asking for specific information, AI has a tendency, depending on how you set it up, and even when you really are strict with it, it will still make stuff up sometimes. I've had conversations with an AI where it was just like, I know this is wrong. Give me the correct one, or give me something better. And it gives me back the one they say it just gave me. It's like, oh no, this is correct. I'm like, no, I know it isn't correct. So you have to watch out for that. But especially in a space like anywhere where you're dealing with hard numbers as part of of what's going to be evaluated, like in claims, I think that you can get a lot out of that from AI as far as having it run a sanity check, validation of what you're doing, and you actually can use it depending on what your level of comfort is. You can actually use it to do some automations as far as like the process itself is making it so that those things will speed through a little faster, connect to the right people. Maybe some of the marketing, if you're independent or if you're a company, it'll also help with some of the like connections to your vendors. If you're like, I'm really struggling with getting this claim to go through because they've got a new system, they can help you with those kinds of things.
In your experience, would you agree that tech decisions matter more in whether it's a property claim or a legal environment for a lawyer, just because the stakes are so high, and there are, of course, legal and ethical implications of the use of technology, software, and AI?
100%. And that's why if there's news out here, there's lawsuits against lawyers and firms that are using AI and they're using the wrong thing. And this is why, yeah, you've got to have the guardrails. You've got to be. This is a perfect example of where a vendor can cause you problems. Is that if they don't understand the data involved with claims, as far as like what really is like, this has got to be 100% correct. Sometimes they'll think that 98% is good enough. And it's like, no, it's 98% might get you into a, legal trouble. So, it's understanding, making sure that who you're working with understands the critical data and how critical that is. And sometimes I've seen it pushed off in the past where vendors will say, well, that's not that important, only to come back and have to say, no, that is critical. If you can't deliver that number correctly 100% of the time, then it is not a useful solution. It is literally something that is, it's a junk solution at that point.
Yeah, that is so important, especially on my side of things. Being an attorney and a lawyer, I've read too many articles about lawyers being sanctioned because they used some AI to write a brief and it hallucinated case law. And you never want to be
Even
that guy. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, if you're going to use that stuff, you've heard the stories for the past year or two since all this stuff has come out, right? Why wouldn't you check it?
Yeah.
And I
I,
guess I guess some of them getting a time crunch and they just don't. So
That's exactly it. Is you've got this goes where your procedures or your company procedures have to be just that much more strict when you're using AI to make sure that you don't just let something skate through. You need to have those like those guardrails and those blocks, those validation points to make sure it doesn't sneak through on you.
Right. Let's talk about leadership lessons from your standpoint. What have you seen over the last 30 years that you think are holding people back in the technology space at their in their career or at their company level, and how leadership can ask better questions and demand more from their technology sector.
Wow, that's probably a whole podcast in itself where you can go with that. But I think one of the probably the there are companies that do it right, but a lot of them, I think the challenge is that you're too focused on what you're doing today, and both the leaders and the technologists is they're just trying to solve the problem for today instead of taking a look at where it's going. And there's so much out there. There's so much change. It's some people I think just sort of like just mail it in. There's like I can't keep up, so I'm not going to try. But you need to continue to look at the latest stuff out there, keep exploring, and not get stuck in a rut. It's very easy to pick a technology, learn it, master it, and say, okay, this is the solution for everything going forward. And that's where you end up in problems because then that's where you have vendors that say, well, you've got to use this thing, this technology, this approach. And maybe you don't. It may have been perfect 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And it isn't anymore because things have moved on. And so I think from a career point of view, as a technologist, you've got to be constantly looking for, I always talk about this, like, what's your next job? Always preparing for whatever your next job is, no matter how high you are up or no matter where you are in the company. And it's not to say that your company stinks or anything like that, but it is like, where do you need to be? How do you keep growing? Because if you're not growing, then you're fading.
Right. So I really only have one more thing for you. We ask everybody this who comes on this podcast. What does it mean to you to level up?
To level up, I mean, take it very, I guess the easiest version of it. Leveling up is getting better each day, is being a better version of yourself than you were the day before. And I'm a big fan of minimal change and momentum. And if you keep doing that every day, then at some point you're going to look back and see a huge increase, a huge level or two or dozens that you have gone up over time.
Great. Well, Rob, I appreciate you talking to me today. Very informative. I'm going to go probably use some AI and then make sure it's not lying to me after this.
There you go. Always, and don't ask it if it's lying because it sometimes will lie even about that. Thank you. This
All
this
right.
has been a great conversation. I've really had a good time.
So we just had a great conversation with Rob Broadhead, software developer, technology strategist, entrepreneur. I really enjoyed his opinions on how companies can use technology and software to scale and not scale at chaos, and what that means in terms of use of AI systems, and especially in the property casualty claim space. Rob was a great guy, and I hope to get to talk to him again soon.
Follow us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe to the show if you want more conversations like this. And if you're serious about operating at a higher level, join us June 12th at the Level Up Claims Summit. Limited seats, exclusive room. Request your invitation at levelupclaim.com.